Hello everyone, I am Jaideep Singh Chahal. Uh, just a disclaimer from my side. This is going to be what we can say a slightly long and maybe for some of us a boring video. But the whole idea of the video is to actually share as much detail as possible about the current project, or rather a project which has been going on from the last three and a half years almost, which is the 1991 92 Nissan Patrol, also known as the GQ or the Y60. So, as I mentioned in the other video, the one that I uploaded last week, that the vehicle was an ex-UK embassy vehicle, and we picked it when it was already parked for the last 16-17 years. So, it's going undergoing an in-depth restoration. So, we'll be doing a couple of videos which will share full detail, as I loved the kind of response that was there from all of you. Everybody wanted to know more about the build and the kind of effort that is going in, and of course the kind of parts. And we'll also try to put some explainers along the way, where I'll try explaining what the parts are doing, what since this is a very good opportunity, because this is not a very regular or a basic lift or a basic restoration that is going on. It is more of something like the resto mod. The vehicle is not only going to be just restored and parked, it is going to be used and used extensively for traveling and all sorts of purposes that we normally put our vehicles through. So in spite of being close to, I believe the vehicle is almost same age as me, so 30 plus years old vehicle, but it will be, it is going to be expected from it to perform as if it is brand new from the showroom, rather better than how it came from the dealership. So uh, this video right here is going to cover an in-depth detail of the suspension or the suspension kit that is going in. This vehicle is going to have a very special suspension this time. It is slightly more than what we've ever installed on any vehicle. This one is going to have a 4-inch lift. The Y61 had a 2-inch lift. That was a nitro gas kit. This one is going to be a 4-inch kit, even though the Y61 or the GU and the Y60, that is the GQ, have the exact same frames or the exact same chassis, but the GQ, so the Y60 needs a bigger lift to actually get the right stance, because the shell sits slightly lower. So what we are doing is we're running a 30 block spacer body lift, and also a complete proper 4-inch lift kit, which is meant to perform and not only make the vehicle look good. So we'll start from one side. This right here is the rear coil spring. Uh, Huge coil spring. I don't think I've ever installed a coil spring this size on any vehicle till date. And thanks to Zach, actually, all of this is only possible because uh, Zach from Ironman 4x4 is kind enough to and patient enough to understand and listen to our needs and arrange stuff accordingly. So everything has been thoroughly discussed and researched, and only then it has been ordered. So since as I already mentioned in the vehicle, the Patrol is going to run a roof rack, probably a rooftop tent, a rear bumper with jerry can holder, spare tire. That bumper is very heavy. It's a KMR unit. A winch in the front and an ARB metal bull bar in the front. So that's a lot of extra weight. So this spring, if you can see, we've taken up the B spring. This is meant to take the one first step of extra load. This is a huge coil spring, and in spite of being thicker than the stock spring, these work very well at the right load. So just for a comparison, I have with me the stock coil spring. This kind of looks like a joke in front of the new coil spring. So you'll notice a huge difference in height. This of course is going to be how heavy the vehicle will sit. Visibly almost 4 inches even after compression, since this also will compress After the vehicle sits, the vehicle's weight comes on it, this will also compress. But the relative difference in height is going to be almost the same. So this will add a lift of 4 inches. I don't think if it is going to be that visible on camera, but you can see a nice difference in thickness. It is all in the metallurgy of a spring. A thinner spring doesn't mean it is going to be giving you a better or a softer ride. It is all in the metallurgy, and with the right amount of weight, this will offer the exact amount of sag that we need, and it is going to give a very, very stable ride. So I think we'll get to further detail about the suspension geometry further down in the video. But what I'm trying to explain right now is what all is going in the vehicle. So this with me is the front coil spring. So the Nissan, as we know, the main reason it has such a beautiful fan following, or I would say a cult following, is that it is a coil spring solid axle vehicle, which are very, very rare. Modern day examples would be very few. You can count them on your fingers. It would be the Jeep Wrangler, the Jimny, and I think the modern day Grenadier is another example. I don't think there's any other modern day vehicles which are still coming with the solid axle front. Or you can take up the Nissan Patrol, which is being still sold in a lot of African countries and in the Middle East as the Safari, which is the Y61 rebadged as the Safari. But these are very basic suspensions, but very, very rugged, easy to lift, easy to work with, and very less prone to breaking down. The ride, of course, is a slight compromise when you compare it to an independent front suspension. But I think nothing can ever replace the kind of ruggedness or the kind of rough and tough application that your coil spring solid axle can take up. So this is the front coil spring, and just to compare this right here, we have the front coil spring, which is the stock front coil spring. So massive difference. There's a massive difference in height, and of course in the size as well. So this might look small, even the diameter might look small, but it's a very funny looking spring, but they'll fit in the same seat. So the seats are actually wide, so it takes this spring and the other one as well. So that isn't really a problem. So these are the rear and the front coil spring. Of course, the boxes are there. There'll be two in the back, two in the front. And coming up next is probably the biggest shock absorber I've ever seen or installed on any vehicle. This is the rear shock for the Nissan Patrol. This is the rear shock absorber. Two of these, again, of course, will work in harmony with the rear springs. So very, very big. These are completely extended right now. So just to give you an example of, the kind of travel, this is really going to be a lot of travel. This looks like almost 12 inches of travel. In the back, this is going to work beautifully, because the rear suspension of the Nissan Patrol any which ways is known to give beautiful flex. In spite of being a huge vehicle, it flexes very, very well, and especially with the longer springs and of course longer length shocks to accommodate, it can really extend all the way. So a longer shock actually helps. The spring doesn't really help with flexing out more. It is the shock, because your shock becomes like a positive limiter. The length of the shocker is going to be your maximum length of extension. So the longer the shock you have, more travel you can accommodate. So this being the rear shock, so this has a hole on each end, which is also referred to as an eye, and all the bushes and hardware required for these come along with the packing. So these are nice rubber bushes, and rubber bushes means even softer ride. So this should work very, very well. Next, we come to the front shock. Again, pretty big. One thing that I forgot to mention is that this entire kit is the Foamcell series. I've got a booklet here where I'll show you an in-depth detail of what all models are available. So this is the Foamcell series. The Foamcell is second in the range. It starts with Nitrogas, Foamcell, and Foamcell Pro for all the basic three series that we know. The Foamcell Pro, of course, is grey in color. So these have a thicker shaft than the Nitrogas, and they say better damping. Since we wanted to go for a B spring and a slightly load based application, so we went uh, with the Foamcell series. So this has a pin at both ends. So just the way we call this an eye at both ends, this is referred to as a pin at both ends. So beautiful travel in this one as well. Two in the front, they'll work with this set of coil springs, and we have all the required hardware in the kit. You might be wondering why this rubber covering is running around. So this is called the boot. So this is actually meant to be installed and zip tied here once it is fitted in the right position. So it is supposed to be loose like that till then. After this, we come to the interesting part. Till here is the kind of suspensions that we normally see in the Jimny as well. So the kind of suspensions people have been installing in Jimny, since Jimny is an exact replica of what is there in the Nissan Patrol. Coil springs and solid axle, both front and rear. So till here, till the front rear coil springs and the shocks is something we've been doing a lot, and a lot of us have seen. Uh, After this comes the steering damper, which is installed in the Jimny as well. It has already been installed in the Patrol because we're using it for testing, and it was pretty important to get the right steering feedback, because the stock steering damper was close to 30 years old, and it was damaged beyond repair. So I'm sorry I don't have the steering damper here because it's already installed on the vehicle. But going past this is where the interesting bit starts. So to accommodate a 50 lift, or roughly what we call a 2-inch lift, the list ends right here, and we don't really need any more components to uh, fix your track, or to fix your angle of the front diff or the rear diff. But since we are taking it to 4 inches this time, those extra 2 inches need a lot of extra hardware. So that is where all of these extra bits come in. So what happens is, now we can come to the suspension geometry part. The rear is pretty simple. The rear is common for most. The coil spring is there. There's a solid axle. We are seeing it in a lot of vehicles. There's a coil spring. I would say the rear is pretty much similar to our modern day Fortuner, Type 1, Type 2, Type 3. They have a similar suspension setup as the Patrol. So you have the long diff tube with the two shocks mounted on it, and the two coil springs sit on these perches which are made on your diff tube, and they work vertically. And the diff goes up and down. One side goes up, the other comes down. Since it's not an independent suspension, if one side is going to go up, the other will come down automatically. The difference is in the front. So a solid axle front, unlike the independent suspensions that we used to seeing, works like this. So it has two arms which work like this, and they're actually holding or housing the front diff tube. The front diff tube here looks exactly like the rear diff tube in most vehicles that we see, minus the turning bits at the ends. So it sits like this. These are known as the radius arms, or also as the control arms. It's a very it's a difference in terminology used in different continents, but roughly you can call them the control arms or the radius arms. So these radius arms, what happens when this long spring is going to be fitted, they are going to distance the radius arms from the chassis. When they are distanced like this, because they are housed in the back, they are bolted on the chassis in the back, once they come down like this, they are going to obviously raise the height of the vehicle. But also what happens is, the angle of your differential goes like this, since it is mounted at 2 points. So in order to correct it, either we use a caster correction bush, which is only applicable up to a certain level of lift. Those offset bushes, just the way we've been using in the Jimny, what they do is they bring it back in line, and your also from the side, if you look, that angle is the toe that comes to 0, and you can you can make out that it is back in the right position. In this case, it is not possible to fix that angle just with caster correction bushes. So what we have here is this big heavy metal block. So this is also called a relocation box. This relocation box is actually a drop box or a drop mount, which right here is going to take the radius arms rear, and it is going to drop the rear of the radius arm so that it comes parallel to the body once again. So in order to accommodate that, there's a set of bushes that will go into the radius arm from behind, and they'll sit here. This right here, in aluminum machined, this is an extension of the radius arm. So this is a radius arm length spacer. So the bolt will go through this, and it will lengthen the radius arm, because once it comes down, the length is also going to increase, because the lift increases, it forms a triangle, and from the pivot in the back, the length increases. So to accommodate that increase in length, this is like a 15 or a 12 spacer. This will go behind the radius arm. I would love to show you the kind of finish and quality. If you can see, the bushing goes in perfectly. So this clearly shows the kind of longevity these products are going to have. So this is going to go in, extend the radius arm, and help it come down from the rear. This, from the holes you can see, is going to get bolted onto the stock bolts on the chassis itself. This will become a part of the frame with 5 bolts, sit lower, and make the radius arm sit in the right position. So then the correction of the angle for the front is done, and we need not do anything else. This is only for the angle of your differential, because lift is going to make the differential droop forward. Another thing which is not present in this kit, which has already been installed on the vehicle, is so the shafts, when your vehicle gets lifted, the shaft's angle changes. So to accommodate for that change in shaft angle, just as we've seen in the Hilux on the back, because the back shaft is longer. So the longer the shaft, the more impact the lift has. So across the length, the degrees, they go up very, very proportionately. So the carrier bearing, which holds the shaft onto the frame, it has 2 spaces. I'm using this for reference, twice the thickness of this plate. They get bolted in, and the rear angle of your drive shaft improves for better cross life and less damage and less breakage. So that is not here in the kit, it's already on the vehicle. So that also came as a part of the entire kit. So after that, now what happens, now that the differential angle is corrected, the vehicle is sitting tall, but what happens is these differentials are connected to the chassis as well through a set of arms. If you might have seen, we've all seen Zens and these small hatchbacks back in the day, ones that used to have a solid tube in the back. We would always see this a rod going at an angle into under the rear bumper. So that used to be what we call a panhard, or it is also known as so this panhard, this is what we have right here. So that panhard rod, or it's also known as the track bar. So again, different terminologies, different places, but the panhard or the track bar holds your differential to your chassis. So the diff tube basically. So when you lift, that bar which is fitted like this, it has to cover a longer distance. So again, a triangle is formed. I wish I had something to draw and show you. So a triangle is formed between one point where that bar connects to the differential, another point where it connects to the chassis, and the third point which is directly underneath on the differential. So once the height increases by 4 inches in this case, that bar cannot accommodate a length of 4 inches. Up to 2 inches, those bars are perfectly fine. That bar will work. But in this case, what is going to happen? When the bar comes down, it is going to make your differential shift to one side. So in order to accommodate for the height, the adjustment has to come from one place or the other. So what happens is, then your track will shift to one side. Your body will be sitting here and your differential will be on the other side. The entire tires, your track, the entire vehicle will look as if it is trying to go in a different direction. Same happens in the front. The front also has a track bar, or what we call a panhard rod. So that panhard rod doesn't have any adjustment or any provision to increase the length. So there also what happens, once you lift it, it goes up, but the panhard's length is the restricting factor, so it makes the differential shift the other way. So then you will have an odd looking vehicle which is actually impossible to drive. So with these come into picture these panhards. This is the rear, this is the front panhard. So what happens in these is, if you can see, the bushes are going to be the same, but what you see here is the provision to screw, unscrew, increase the length, and this big nut that you see is going to work as a check nut, and it will accommodate the longer length. So what this will do is, after being installed on the vehicle, these will be loosened, the track comes to zero in the center. After measuring, this can be check nut locked and put in place to correct your track once again, and then you have a vehicle that sits straight. So in this case, even though it might just sound like a cosmetic measure, this is very important for a vehicle to drive properly and to not topple. These small differences in your suspension geometry can cause very big differences, very big changes in the way the vehicle drives, handles, and especially goes around turns. So these can change the entire characteristic of the vehicle. So these two are, of course, you can see both of these are beautiful, heavy, and very solid panhards. So these are also good as they are galvanized, they are not prone to chipping, and they can take a beating. That you can see from the size of the nut and the kind of metallurgy these are. So another restricting factor that comes in the end is, once this is lifted, the last rod that is connected is what connects your the ends of both of your steerings, both of your uprights or the knuckles for steering. So that needs to be upgraded, and that also needs to have a mount which can take uh, rest of the components, and also your uh, front I'm sorry, I'm missing the name, which can take your steering damper, your front steering damper. So this bracket is right here, it bolts onto that, the steering damper goes in there, and these both we can see, these are the ends or the rod ends, and this also comes with the provision of extension and check nut. So this can take the increase in length, the increase in angle, the change in angle, because this also works at an angle. So when the vehicle is lifted, uh, the length completely changes, so the requirement of length changes as well. So this can accommodate the increase in length. So these components here are what form the basis of successfully lifting the vehicle 4 inches. So all of these will go in, the stock panhards will come out, and these will go in, the steering rod will come out, this will go in. One thing that one question that a lot of people might have is, if for the front we are doing that, why aren't we working on the control arms, or also known as the trailing arms, for the rear? Because the rear suspension works like this. If this is your differential, there are two sets of generally not very long trailing arms which hold the differential at 4 points, and they help it go up and down, and uh, they also hold the differential in line. In this case, the reason Nissan Patrol is such a successful vehicle, especially off-road or for articulation purposes, is that the rear trailing arms are very long. It probably has the longest trailing arms I've seen on a vehicle. They're so long that they can actually accommodate a 4-inch lift with the stock trailing arms. This one does not need extendable trailing arms, even up to 4 inches of lift. The panhard is enough to make it function the right way. I think we've managed to cover the basics of what all is going into the vehicle. The reason we went into this kind of detail is uh, a lot of people were actually wanting to know what we are planning to do with the vehicle, and it'll be a lot of fun to share the kind of journey that you know that goes into restoring a vehicle from how we picked it, parked as trash, and now something which becomes very desirable. So I, even if we manage to help anyone clear their concepts, even a single person learn something, it is a big deal for me that I'm in this position that I can at least help people understand things better. So this covers the suspension part. Another thing that is going to go in um, is this. So this has been sitting with me for a long time. This is a differential breather kit. So I've had a few people message me regarding what a differential breather is and how does it work. So I'll quickly try to show you. This is a length of hose that comes with it, and these are the hardware bits. So this again is from Ironman. This is a very good quality hose. It's a loose length. We can use as much as we need. So basically, what happens is if we can take an example from something we've all seen happening at home. Uh, when we're frying something at home in oil, when that oil is heated up, it releases vapor or it rises in the form of vapor as well. Some of the oil which burns or which exceeds the working temperature or the evaporation temperature for the oil. So in the same way, the engine in our vehicle and the differentials in a vehicle work submerged in oil, especially the differentials, since they sit very low. But what happens is when the gears or the spider gears in the differential, the crown and pinion, when it spins at a very high RPM, it releases a lot of heat. So the differential oil heats up as well. So when that differential oil heats up, the vapor which is formed needs a place to escape. So if you look carefully at any differential, this could be a solid axle vehicle, this could be this could be an independent front suspension vehicle. All of them will have a small spring loaded nipple. It'll kind of look like uh, the whistle on the lid of our pressure cookers. It will have a small amount of play that is like a one-way valve which is used to release vapor from inside. Sadly, these one-way valves are not exactly one-way valves. The differential being very low, once it is submerged in water, these one-way valves, after being in use for a while, they allow water to come in as well. So that water that goes in and mixes with oil, we all know it is not a good thing to happen. It leads to denaturization of the oil. It leads to the forming of something that I can only describe as yogurt in your differentials. Same happens if you get water in your engine chamber as well. So what this does is, this basically is a very simple device, I would say. I'll open it up for you. So this is one of the modifications which I believe should be done by everyone on every vehicle. So this is a standard sized brass nipple. That one-way valve can come out. That one-way valve, once it comes out, this will be screwed in. The thread is, it's like a universal thread. It'll go in, it screws in. This gets attached here, and just like that, you will push it in all the way, and on top you get these clamps. You clamp it in at one end, and this hose, length as per choice, is then routed to your firewall or to a suitable high place. Okay, so in this case, this will be the front, this will be the firewall, and this is the main component. This is the working component. So this what you see, this is like a filter. This is like a one-way wall, and two ins. So this will take the hose, one will go to the front differential, the other will come from the rear differential, and they will both the pipes will run and meet at one place and screw into this. They'll be clamped onto this. So this, what happens is, this is always placed near where you would find the topmost position in your firewall, ideally next to the wiper motor area or next to the brake master cylinder, around that area, so that you're able to raise the height of the breather for your differential from something which is like 10, 11, 12 inches, 14 inches off the ground to 3 to 4 feet above. So this difference is where what increases your water wading depth, and this also helps the differential to breathe freely. What happens is, generally mud, dirt gets into the one-way valve and chokes it for good. If it is choked, there is no breathing space for the pressure and the vapor which is forming in your differentials. So having a free breathing differential is very important for good health of your differential, especially if somebody is running an expensive you know uh, differential locker, or like the Hilux comes with a factory fitted rear electronic diff lock. So protecting hardware like that is very important. Stuff like that, if it runs in bad oil, it is definitely going to be a big expense. So this is probably the cheapest fix that you can have. They've attached a bunch of zip ties, self-tapping screws to just screw it into the firewall and be done with it. So this is like this and a catch can. I will do another video on a catch can, how the catch can works. This and the catch can is probably what I feel the most basic but the most essential add-on that can be done. This is from Ironman. I'd like to mention Alpha Resin by Thomas from 6 Miles. They're also manufacturing these breather kits in India itself. So very good quality products. You can definitely take those up as well. So there's no science in this. There's nothing as a higher quality diff breather kit. Everything works the same. You can even just have pipe and you replace your one-way valve on top and it will work the same. Just the thing is, these work better. That's it. Better breathing, and they're not spring loaded, so they don't get stuck. So I think that's about it. Just to clear some doubts, I managed to find this catalog. So if you can just bring the camera closer. So this is the nitro gas, which comes in 3 variants. This is the Foamcell, this is the Foamcell Pro, and this is the different kinds of suspension configurations that we get. A leaf would be ideally in something like a Gypsy. A coil and coil, is something that we're using in the Patrol right now. A coil and a leaf in the back is something from a Hilux, I would say. A strut and coil, this would be your Fortuner, of course, coils, but coil over in the front. Torsion bar and leaf in the back. Torsion bar and leaf in the back should be, this is the Endeavour. The Gen 1 Endeavour used to have leaves in the back and torsion bars in the front. And torsion bar and coil in the back, this is your Pajero's setup. I'm glad I managed to get all of those right. So this is the different kind of configurations you can have, and this is the different variants that you can have. One thing that I also wanted to point out, since everything about the Patrol is huge, so making getting clarity on the difference in size sometimes can be a little difficult. So just to give an example to all of you, what I did was, this is the front coil spring from the Patrol, and I have a 2-inch left coil, again a B coil, just like this is a B coil from the Hilux, because I think Hilux, I am sorry, it is not the same kind of a suspension geometry. Of course, the Hilux is an independent front suspension. This is a solid axle front, but still it is considered big. So what I have with me is the front coil, B coil from a Hilux. So I'll place it next to this one just to get an idea. Sorry, this is an A coil. So that's the amount of difference, and that is what shows how massive the Patrol is. I know all of us think the Hilux is big, but then the Patrol is bigger. So that's the kind of difference in size that we're looking at. Minded, this is not a stock spring. This is a 2-inch lift spring for the Hilux. Completely different suspension geometries, but just to give an idea of how big it is, I wanted to place them together and just for reference, so that we have a little clarity as to how big or how massive a vehicle we are working with. So that being it, I think we've managed to cover basics of the suspension. Uh, if anyone wants even more detail, any explainers with I don't know how clear I was with explaining how the suspension or the geometry works. I can happily draw it out or label or chalk it out for you as well. It is always a pleasure to share information with such supportive people out there. So I think we'll conclude this video here. There'll be more stuff coming up in the Nissan Patrol series on the channel. So I think that's about it. If there's any more information that you need, or if there's any more suggestions as to what should be covered or how it should be covered, please do let me know. I would be happy to take it up. Thank you.